Hello, everybody, and welcome to Podfluxxx, episode 66. And Rick, I'm pissed. You may have noticed I am not in my normal surroundings. We're probably going to have a little bit of a delay tonight. I've been relegated to the basement, and the basement is where Wi-Fi goes to die.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you what happened. I'm going to catch you up on the last week before we jump into what we're jumping into. So last Friday, I leave my house in the morning, go to get in my truck to go to work, and realize that my driver door is caved in. Somebody was nice enough to come by overnight and hit my truck while it was parked.
Oh, man.
And they were polite enough to not leave a note and just leave. So, and they hit it in just a spot where the only damage is like an 18-inch canyon right next to my door handle, and then where the door closes looks like the fucking tail end of a skateboard. So that's really cool. Luckily, a lot of my neighbors have surveillance camera.
Okay.
Right? But with my luck, none of them were facing towards my house. And one of the guys comes up to me yesterday and hands me a flash drive. And he's like, here you go, Friday into Saturday. And I was like, no, bro, Thursday into Friday. So he gave me a new flash drive, which contains the footage from not the right camera. So I'm just going to eat the insurance deductible on this one. And I'm pissed, right? Now, back to being in the basement. I'm getting a new couch on Saturday, and that's where I normally film from is the living room, right?
Yeah.
But the closest we could get special pickup to come and pick up the other couch was this morning. So I had to take my couch apart last night after like a 7-hour round of golf, which is a whole other story. Spoiler alert, I'm still bad at golf. And now I have no place to sit. Henry's pissed. I'm pissed. And I'm down here in the basement, which also has no couch because the other couch is coming for the basement. So I'm sitting on one of those wooden fold-in chairs that they used to break over Meng's head in 1994 in WCW.
Yeah.
No air conditioning. I got a fan going. Rachel's like, oh, well, you're down there. Check my laundry. So that's what kind of fucking night we're having here. Anyway, how are you?
Better than you, that's for sure. Just took Reyes to go see his 4th grade teacher, and that's about as eventful as my day's been. So,
God, I wish I had days like yours.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you a couple of days like yours that you probably wish that you didn't have, and they were yours. So, Rick, I've been doing a little research, and here we are. We're jumping into it. Victory Pro Wrestling, my favorite topic, probably your favorite topic. And we were debating a little bit at the end of last week as kind of like a teaser of what your first match in VPW was. And what did you say it was?
I'm almost positive it was with Vinny, right? Like a 15-minute draw.
Okay. Let me tell you why you think that.
Okay.
Because you blocked the actual first match out of your memory, more than likely on purpose. So, Ricky Reyes, do you remember where you were October 18th, 2008?
Wasn't it Deer Park?
Oh, you were in Deer Park.
I thought it was with Vinny, wasn't it?
Nope, we're not there yet. You're, according to CageMatch.net. Now, I know, I'm going with reliable sources here, and this cage match shit is all the rage with the nerds on the internet. So there's no way we can get heat for using their information. It was a tag team match, playa. And it was you and Mac Daddy Flex versus Best Bodies Inc., Joe So Delicious, and Sabotage, now known as the Colossal Mike Law, in Deer Park, Long Island.
I do not remember that one bit. Like, not even a little.
Not even a little.
No, I have no. The only time, so I remember wrestling Flex, I think. And what's the other, the Joe So Delicious, or
Yeah, he was in that tag match.
no? I remember wrestling. I thought I wrestled him at Center Reach, but all right. I mean, it's on the internet, so it must be real.
It's gotta be true.
Yeah.
Joe So also, no longer with us. Rest in peace, Joe So Delicious. But you know what you did immediately following that?
No.
That match was so exciting that 4 days later, you were like, I need to get out of this country. Okay? And you went to Japan, and you stayed there for about, it looks like a week and a half, okay?
Yeah.
And then you came back, and you debuted in Center Ridge, Long Island, in a 15-minute draw against SK.
I swear I thought it was in Deer Park. Like, I mean, all right, maybe they just running together, but I could have sworn I wrestled him in Deer Park the first time, but okay.
So what do you remember from we're gonna consider this your first dipping of the toes into the VPW well. So what does your brain bring to you about this?
Oh, okay, so first I want to go back even further, right? The first time I met Sean, and who was the guy that used to book Sean's shows? Remember?
Johnny Five.
So I met them in a Ring of Honor Long Island show. I want to say maybe a couple years or a year before this.
Do you remember where that was held?
I don't remember exactly the building. It was the one that, I don't know if you remember, Punk was in ECW, but they let him do the Ring of Honor show, and then there was a blizzard, and then we were stuck. We were like stuck.
It was the Sports Plus in, I want to say maybe Farmingville or Selden.
Possibly, yeah. I don't really remember the specifics, but I remember that was the first time I had to drive through a blizzard to try to get home. It took me like 8 hours to get what would take me 2.5, right, or 3. But I met Sean there, and what Sean did was he asked if I could do a seminar for the school. That's where I first met JD.
Right.
So
you met JD at the ROH show.
What?
You met JD at the ROH show?
No. I met Sean at the ROH show. Okay. He came and asked if I would host a seminar at the school. So I told him that I would. So I ended up staying out there. Like, so when we came back, I think that's when we had planned it. I remember I stayed overnight there, and then we had another shot somewhere. So I told him, I said, yeah, I could do it early because I got to get going to Newark or wherever we were at the next day. So he was like, yeah, that's fine. So I did, like, let's say 12 to 3 p.m. or something at the school. And that's where I met JD. Because I remember thinking, like, man, this guy with the long hair is really, really good. Like surprising. Everything I told him, he just did. A little, as we come to know that he's like the greatest professional wrestler to ever live. Right. And I'm like, man, if that guy just like got in shape and like just got out there, he'd be amazing, So
The
that was
greatest
the
wrestler to ever lace up kick pads sideways.
sideways, yeah, and just do standing shooting star presses because someone said, go ahead, do one. Okay. Yeah. So that's the first time. So that was my first interaction with Sean and Johnny Five. I guess Johnny Five was like a big Ring of Honor mark, as we can tell from his booking.
He thought that he thought he was Rob Feinstein,
Okay.
right? He thought he was going to book shows and we were going to corner the markets on selling DVDs and, wacky commentators and shit like that. Told me I could never be a heel. What was your initial, all right? Because Sean's a special type of dude, right? So this guy rolls up to you. Do you think like, all right, I'm going to show up somewhere tomorrow and this guy's going to try to give me the old thumb in the bum? Or like, did you think, what was your first thoughts on Sean?
No, I mean, I always liked Sean, and he was always cool with me, like I never had any issues with him ever about anything. I think I was more turned off by Johnny Five, how much of a mark he was, like the stuff he wanted to talk about was like mark stuff,
Right.
And like Sean was just more concerned with like trying to get the school better because Sean's big thing was always putting out good wrestlers, right? Like he didn't really care about, and we'll get into more of that, but he didn't ever care about how many people were there. He just wanted the guys that were there to be good, which is why him and I got along so well. So I was more turned off by Johnny Five because he kept like asking Mark things and wanted to talk to Gabe, and and I didn't like Gabe or Gabe's booking, so that's why Johnny Five's thoughts and stuff just didn't work well. And I told him a couple of times once we started getting the ball rolling why it wasn't working, but he didn't want to hear all that. He was the booker, right? So I really like Sean because he seemed to be kind of like give you just enough direction and then you're either going to sink or swim. So I think that was that's what's needed in pro wrestling from a promoter. A booker, that's a whole different argument, right? But as a promoter, he just kind of wanted to promote the events and do that and then let the wrestlers wrestle, and then if we had good direction then we could go in that direction. So I like Sean. Johnny Five was nice, like he's a nice guy or whatever, but he's too much of a mark promoter, or booker,
Right.
Wants to book what he sees that he likes and books it the exact same way, not realizing the crowd don't like it and just didn't want to change it. And that's why we suffered for a little bit. But I like Sean, and then I like the school. And then when I went, I asked Sean, what did he need? What did he want? And Sean said, can you just do like how you would like some drills and stuff he goes, I'm going to write everything down that you're telling them, and we're going to do that. And I was like, oh, you guys don't have like a specific what you guys do? Because I was going to like let them start class, and then I was going to interject and then eventually just kind of start teaching. But he was more like, no, how would you do it? How would you run? And I was like, oh, okay. So, and then I just did the drills, right? And then the stuff that we needed to work on. So then I kept in touch with him, through, I think at the time we were just emailing each other. And then he told me he had some shows coming up. So I was like, yeah, I'm definitely interested. So we worked that out. And then that was that weekend. I remember that. I don't remember that match in Deer Park. Like I don't even remember glimpses of it. Like I can't even, can't even tell you how many people were there or whatever. But I remember the VSK match, but I could have sworn in my brain we're doing it in Deer Park. I know we had some in Deer Park, but I'm saying like
The rematch about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks later in Deer Park.
Oh, maybe that must be what I'm thinking about then.
The draw was in Center Reach.
Yeah.
The draw was in Center Reach on November 1st, right?
Yeah.
And the rematch was in Deer Park on December 6th.
Okay, that's what. Okay, all right. I must be thinking of that match in December. Okay. Like I can see that. I can see parts of it in my brain, but okay. So yeah. So that was that, and then I just remember Sean was like, he was nice, and I think I got the impression that he just wanted to run the shows. Like he just wanted to have the people there like that, which later on we all found out that's all he really wanted to do was promote and kind of just let the wrestlers, he never claimed to be an expert on wrestling or running or booking a show. So we never had arguments like that, or even discussions for that matter, because he was always like, yeah, that sounds good. Okay, cool. And then that was it, that's just how he always was.
The one thing, Sean was always just about promotion.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, but he knew enough to know, like, he'd be like, what are you doing? Look at these fucking people. Go do a headlock. Like he knew.
Right. Yeah, I'm not saying he didn't know anything.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he wasn't the kind of guy who was gonna go be like, "Oh, do this, and then catch a quick one." He was
right.
He was good enough. He knew his strengths and he knew his weaknesses.
Correct.
He knew what worked.
Right.
Anyway, you were saying.
No, I mean that's exactly it. I mean, he was like a promoter, like Paul Bosch. Like, I always use him as an example, or Sam Muchnick. They were never the bookers. They knew what good talent was out there, and they filled up the building with those good talents, and then had other people in charge of other departments, like you're supposed to do in the business.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I right away always really got along with Sean. He was always super cool to me, and I think everyone's bitching and griping or whatever that later on started to happen was more of they just didn't understand. Well, they don't understand the wrestling business and how it's a slow burn. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Because we don't ever end, right? So the quicker you get the belt, the quicker you got to drop the belt, so people don't quite grasp that either, and I mean, that's a whole nother story in the VPW. I'm sure we'll get to later too, but it's how we made our champions, which was very old school, like listen to the crowd. He needs to be the guy type of thing. It didn't matter how good of a wrestler they were. It was if you got those big crowd reactions, we wanted to work with in that direction.
So from either one of these two VSK matches, do you remember anything specific? Because I kind of do, and I've got a whole opposite perspective on all of this that we'll get into in a little while.
Okay. So I think I remember the December match more for getting hit really hard from Vinny, and he was very, very fast, right? So it was a lot of like slow down, because it felt like he was like excited to do some sort of I know he wanted to do a certain style of match, but he just didn't know how to change gears to get the crowd to react the way he wanted them to.
I remember you coming back after that one, right? And this was definitely the one in the Deer Park Community Center, because I feel like I remember being on the stage or maybe in the hallway. And again, we didn't really know you yet, but I was listening to what you were saying to Vinny after the match, because the smart ones of us were always trying to listen to what you were saying to somebody. I did at that point just because you scared me. But and I remember you being like, did I make you mad? Like, why did you punch me in the face so much?
Right.
And him being like, well, you said to fire up. And you were like, yeah, but why did you punch me in the face so much? And I remember being like, note to self, don't punch this guy in the face.
Yeah. That was definitely the Deer Park one. I don't know if the first one, man, I cannot remember the first one for the life of me. I only remember the Deer Park one. And it's probably because I got hit so many times so hard and so fast, like later on you guys would learn, like if it's going to be a big one, make it a big one, so we can all see it and enjoy it, right? Like, but I got like 7 big ones really fast and with no big reaction, so I'm just eating potatoes in there. And so yeah, that's the one that really sticks out in my head, and it's just like I can feel his nervous energy in there, like picking him up and telling him something, and it's like boom, it just like explodes right in my face, and I'm like, well, not yet. Like that's what I was planning on doing this soon, but now it's over, So right. Yeah.
I mean, that must have been like like for him, the kind of situation to be in where like he was young, he was skinny, he was gifted, and the promoter kept being like, no, like you're gonna be the star, Vinny's the star. And in practice, he'd always be like, nobody hurt Vinny, and he went out and made a blue belt just for Vinny.
Yeah, So I remember Sean asking me to do the matches with him, and he was like, yeah, I got this kid. He's really, really good. He's like a Shawn Michaels, And I thought, oh, okay, cool. Like, that's fine. And then I worked him the first time, and he's like, yeah, you think you can do that again, And I was like, all right. And he's like, tell him, because I didn't know, right? So I'm telling Sean, like, yeah, he needs to slow down. And I'm just telling Sean to tell him, because I didn't want him to think I was, telling him what to do. Like, why is this guy coming in here telling me what to do? Like, so I told Sean, thinking Sean would understand and be able to relay, instructions. And then the one where I was stiffed a lot was the one where I was like, okay, nice Ricky Reyes has left the building. We need to have a talk now. And I just couldn't, again, it was, I want somebody to tell me something, like, who's telling you to do this stuff is basically what I was trying to get out of him, right? Because I'm like, did somebody tell you to hit me a bunch of times, or did somebody pay you? Like, so yeah, it was, I just, that was the one that really stuck out in my head. But like I had spoke to Sean later, he started booking me after this with like Flex and Joso and the random Rods guys, right? Like, I think it was more like a favor to Rods or whatever, maybe. Like, those bookings probably were, but I always was booked with one of those guys, and I didn't like wrestling them. And you guys were going out getting these crazy pops because you guys were like the hometown guys. And I kept telling Sean, like, how come I can't work with them or this guy or that guy? And he's like, yeah, no, he's not that good. And I'm like, well, with that type of reaction, I'll make him good. Like, like, because the other guys, they weren't, I don't know Rod's training, but anybody that I've ever saw come through there from Rod's school was not impressive in any way. They weren't bad, but they just didn't know how to connect with the fans. Like, that was the hardest thing to drag out of those guys, was when and where to have that crowd acknowledgement,
Well, let me tell you one thing. You disliked your match with Vinny so much that after that, you left the country for like 3 months. No, longer.
Oh, I went to Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
For like a year, yeah.
Yeah. You went to Puerto Rico for a year, and when you came back to VPW to work a four corners elimination match with, you're gonna love this, Nick Saint, Flames, and Muscles Marinara. I don't know if I've said the words Muscles Marinara
You're right.
in 10 years. So
Right.
I don't know if there's a better time or place to talk about Muscles Marinara.
Well, okay, so going back to when I went to Puerto Rico, it was only supposed to be for like a 6-week trip or whatever. So I had kept in touch with Sean. And then in the summer, Carlos asked if I wanted to go home for a few months, and I told him that I didn't because I felt like I didn't get everything out of this run that I wanted to, because he was like, "Oh, go home and then come back in 3 months," So I spoke with Carlos about some angles and stuff. He's like, "Well, I don't have any ideas for you." So he told me to come by his office and talk to him. So I did, and I had 3 angles that I pitched to him, and he took the third one that I really didn't want to do, but I just ended up doing because that's what he wanted me to do. And then I think I came back in like November or something, maybe right before Thanksgiving or something like that. And then I was in contact with Sean. Like once I knew by September that I was leaving, in November, I contacted Sean, and then that's when he started giving me dates and was like, "Yeah, if you could be here regularly, that would be great." So that's how that worked. Like I think Sean was the first promoter I contacted once I knew I was coming home.
You worked Halloween 2009 in
Bayamon.
in Bayamon, yep. And then you worked the 7th of November at
Pittsburgh.
the Arena.
The what?
Ace.
Oh, Ace. Oh, okay.
And then 7 days later, you were in Center Reach.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So Sean was actually the first promoter, though. Once I knew I was coming home, I reached out to. Yeah, he was the first person I reached out to, because I kept looking at your guys' schedule, and you guys were having like it seemed like every few weeks you guys had a show. So I was like, okay, well, I want to be on that. So yeah, I remember getting there, and he always booked these odd matches for me. Like, the only one he specifically wanted was the Vinny one. And then after that, I felt like he was like, I always had to tell him, how come I can't work like EJ Risk, like, yeah, no. I'm like, well, why not? Like, you made me work the other long-haired kid. Like, he don't know what the fuck he's doing either. He punched me in the mouth 7 times. Like,
the really skinny one.
Yeah, book me against a really skinny one. His punches won't hurt nearly as much because the other one's kind of strong.
Yeah. Oh shit. So you do this 4-way with Muscles in them. Yeah. Goddamn, Muscles was a national treasure. I loved he would argue with the referee, but he wouldn't actually say words. He would just move his mouth and mime with his hands.
And mime, yeah.
Oh god. Oh, dude, what a time.
Right.
And then a month later, you come back, and just like you said, you come back, and he's got you in a match with Javier. You remember Javier?
I do. He had like long hair, right? Yeah. Air Javier or something like
that.
Yeah. Okay, so I remember that. Maybe I saw some of his match or something on him, and I thought, oh, maybe I could work with this guy, because it seemed like he could do stuff, I just wanted somebody that knew that looked like they knew what they were doing. He didn't last too long with us, though, right? Like after this.
No, he was originally in the angle with us, and then he bailed, and then they put in Richie Tyler, who you famously called what's his
Yes,
And
that's what happened.
And then we just decided, all right, we'll just do this 4-on-3 for the next few months.
Yes, that is right. Yeah.
So that is December of 2009. When did you start doing the training?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. So I remember Sean had a ring rental for a guy that did a big Lucha show in Yonkers, New York.
The Lucha Vavoom shows.
No, it wasn't Vavoom. No, it wasn't Vavoom. It was a different guy. Because I know who runs Vavoom, but it was a different. It was a guy. It was a different guy. But he did some Lucha show and had like way too many people on it. But I remember Sean was renting the ring, and I don't know when that show was, but I remember that's when Sean asked me to train the school. And I asked him, I said, okay, well, what days are training? Because I don't live in New York, you know? And he said, well, we just do Sundays. And I was like, well, that's kind of perfect because I can be in the area and then just do the training. So he was like, yeah, it's just Sundays. And then so we worked it out. He was like, and I said, well, how many Sundays do you need me? And he was like, if you can do every, yeah, well, yeah, he was like, well, if you could do every other one. And then I was like, well, that's kind of perfect because I could just plan it out, whatever, my schedule, right? So I don't remember how early that started. But I remember I was excited for it because he told me that day, I don't care how many people show up, I just want them to be good. He goes, so if you're training one person, then that's the person that you're training. And I said, okay, because I said the problem is I don't like wasting my time training. You know, especially if I'm gonna be like 3 hours away from home. I want to get good training for myself, and you know, I don't really want to goof off and make it like we're just not doing much. And he was like, yeah, no, that's perfect. He goes, I have a lot of guys, you know, and you know, so that's how all that started.
Well, you come back on January 16th in 2010 and you work Flames again in a singles match with Flames.
Yeah.
Do you even remember who Flames is?
I can kind of see him in my head. I remember we always made fun of him in many different ways. Yeah, like a little porn mustache.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like mullet and like Marty.
The mullet. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now, yes.
I mean, I think the statute of limitations is passed. So you want to hear a good story?
Yes.
So Eric gets a new phone or something, right? Or he gets Flames' number. And we're riding to a show somewhere, I think in Connecticut. Okay? And Eric's like, we're sitting in the car. He's like, I'm going to call Flames. We're like, what are you going to say? He's like, I don't know. We'll just figure it out. So he dials. He puts it on speaker. Flames picks up. Eric goes, hey, yo, man, we're right outside. And he was like, what? He's like, we're outside right now. What are you doing? We're late. What are you doing? And he's like, who is this? And he's like, well, what do you mean, man? We got to go. It's time to go. You got your cleats? And the kid goes, my cleats? What? Eric's like, we're outside the house right now. Get your cleats. Let's go. And then he's like, who is this? What are you talking? I'm looking out my window. And Eric goes, fuck you, man. We're out of here. And just hangs the phone up.
I remember that because Eric would say, you got your cleats? You got your cleats? All through practice. You got your cleats? I remember talking to somebody and like explaining something, and Eric would just walk by and say, you got your cleats?
Oh, shit. All right. So after Flames, okay, that's January. And then we got nothing in February, nothing in March. I mean, you're doing a bunch of shit, but I'm not seeing any VPW shows for you, okay?
Yeah.
And then January, February, March, April, May. May has two shows, but you worked twice on one of them.
Was one the Rumble?
No.
Oh.
One is it's you and Mac Daddy Flex for the title in Center Reach.
Yeah, didn't we go on like first or second?
It doesn't say when.
Okay. Yeah, that was when I was okay. So I hadn't started training the school yet, or maybe I just started. But I remember that pissed me off because he didn't want to do anything. And he said his shoulder hurt. It's hurt real bad. And then he's like, "Oh, I got to get out of here. We're on second or something." That match, that's in Center Reach, right?
Yes.
Yes. That was the show where I put my foot down with Sean because I was like, okay, well, he needs to understand these guys don't want to do shit. And I'm wasting my time because you guys were going out getting reactions from the crowd. And you guys weren't doing it right, but you were trying really hard, you know? So it was making me really mad that I couldn't work with guys that wanted to work. And then this fucking guy's claiming he can't lose the belt to me, but his shoulder hurts and he has to be like the second match or whatever. So that was the night where me and Sean had more of a serious, like, you want to make money or you're just paying these guys because they're taking your money. You're not paying the guys that are over, which were you guys. I think I had started training the school at this. I feel like I did, but you know what? I think I did because I thought a good way to promote the school would be to put the belt on me, and then I was the head trainer of the school. So
right.
people would look at it like, oh, this is a real thing. Like, I'm almost positive that that's right when I started training you guys.
Well, we came back 2 weeks later, and you worked twice in the Deer Park Community Center in the same night. You defeated Kelly O'Shelley. Who the hell was Kelly O'Shelley?
I don't know.
And then after that, you were in a triple threat match with Flex and Joe Delicious.
That I remember, yeah.
So, and then he's got your back next month against Minion. So you're right. Here you are, starting to work. These are all the Johnny Rods guys.
Yeah. Okay. So the change happens at the Gold Rush Rumble. I think that year it was on my birthday. I think August 21st that year.
Yep.
And I went and I challenged. I don't challenge the heavyweight champion, which was Flex. I said I wanted to challenge the best wrestler in VPW, which was VSK. And that was when I smacked the shit out of Vinny because he tried to make like a funny joke during the promo. I don't know if you remember that.
No, remind me.
Okay, so it was on my birthday. And I told Vinny, I said, okay, here's I said, so leading up to August, right? I'm having multiple conversations with Sean about working with you guys. But by this time, I'm definitely training you guys.
Yeah, because you worked in July. We had 2 shows in July.
Yeah.
On one of them, you worked that guy, Johnny Armani, who was from Florida.
Okay.
Right? And then the next week, you worked Kevin.
Yes. Okay, yeah. So we're definitely training at this point because I can feel like the shift. So Sean's kind of, with seeing us in training and moving, I'm sure he's thinking like this would be a good match, right? Because I'm sure he didn't see you guys being able to wrestle good matches with me, I guess. Like, because he just wouldn't book it. So this is the process of starting it. But what I was getting at was the Gold Rush Rumble was going to be when we were going to start doing things like more for the students and my way, I guess, as opposed to Sean booking these outside guys that aren't doing anything. So anyways, I remember we do the Gold Rush Rumble, and I tell Vinny, I said, hey, I want to do an angle at the end of the Gold Rush Rumble to get them excited for our match. And he was like, okay. So I said, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna do a promo, and I'm gonna kind of shit on Flex or whoever was the heavyweight champion. I'm gonna say I'm not here to challenge just for the heavyweight title. I'm here to, I'm here to wrestle the best, and the best wrestler in this promotion or whatever is the New York State champion. And in order for me to be the number one wrestler here, I have to beat him and take his title, whatever. And then I said, then cue your music, and then you come out. And then I was like, whatever, I knew I didn't script it out. I gave him my line where his music would hit, and then he would come out. But then he started this, because you know how he is with when Eric's in the back, they got to rub each other's vaginas all day. So he says something to the effect of, oh, I'm surprised you won this. What is it? Your birthday, or this was like a birthday present or something to that effect. Well, all I could see in my head was Ric Flair smacking the shit out of Ricky Steamboat, right? So, like in an old promo in Georgia. So he says that line, and he kind of like laughs, right? And then he looks to the curtain, because Eric is like peeking his eye out, waiting for the line, right? Then I realized, oh, these motherfuckers think this is funny. So I smacked the shit out of him, and then and I'm thinking, okay, in my head, I'm thinking this will turn into a brawl. Somebody hopefully will send some guys and we'll do a big pull apart. This is perfect. But he didn't. He just got bitch slapped, and he stood there holding his dick. And then I think I closed it with whatever, and then I just left. And then he comes to the back, and he's like, oh, you didn't tell me you were going to slap me. I was like, well, I didn't know you were going to take it as a fucking joke. I was like, so I yelled at him, and I was like, we're trying to build a house here, and you guys are in here fucking throwing zingers. Like, we're not Sean and Brett yet, because Sean and Brett were over. You know what I mean? Like, they were making money. You haven't done dick. You know what I mean? I'm trying to help you guys, So I really got into him that day. That may have been the day, I don't know, like after that, he didn't seem so friendly with me anymore after that. So I was like, that's fine. Like, I really didn't care. But the point was to do an angle at the end of the show that would build for the next show, which would become a theme that we would continue to do, right? So that's what kept those string of houses up,
So I guess you win the Gold Rush Rumble, and the Gold Rush Rumble 4-way that year, you beat Joe Delicious, Joe Von Schmidt, and Kev. So I think what they were doing was they were doing something with Joe Delicious and Joseph Von Schmidt.
Yes.
And we were starting to do what we were doing.
Yes.
Because the very next month, we come back to the Deer Park Community Center, and it's EJ Risk and Ricky Reyes defeating a wildly popular tag team called the Funky Fresh Boys. Rick, what can you tell us about those two young upstarts in the Funky Fresh Boys?
Yeah, well, this was a definite Sean and Marty situation. No.
Don't call him Marty.
I was gonna say, poor Kev. We're Marty Jannetting on Kev right now. No. So this was, again, more of my influence with Sean finally being able to say, let me get in there with the guys that give a fuck, right? And like have some fun, like, and do some stuff. So no, seriously, but that was the thing. This was part of the whole story, was I could hear you guys getting those reactions, and I'm like Hogan in the corner watching this NWO happening, brother.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get me some of that, you know. And that was my plan, was to show Sean that what I could get out of you guys, you know. I mean, as you know, Sean wasn't there at practice the whole time, right? It was kind of like
Oh,
he would just leave,
he was like
but then
he was like a doorman. He would come, open the door, help
yeah,
set the ring up, and then he would leave. And then, you know, for a while we were always like, oh, I wonder what he's doing while we're practicing.
right.
But the guy was like out putting up fucking street signs
He was
and
promoting, right,
printing up flyers and
right,
posting and doing
right.
whatever he did with, you know, special needs people for his own entertainment.
Yeah. But
Which
that was the thing, was he wasn't, so when he'd come back, I would kind of have like a briefing with him about what happened and who's getting it and who's not. And of course with Sean, it was a lot of, yeah, that's great. But to me, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to start pushing this issue a little bit more, because it doesn't seem like he really cares, but these guys deserve to get to that next level type thing. And we could all do it together and make money. Like, that was the plan.
So at this point in the training of us, right, I always wondered, like, what your mindset on it was. Because I remember initially thinking, like, because your regiment was so different from what we were doing beforehand, right? Because we didn't really have one. Every once in a while, another wrestler more experienced than us would show up and we would do some shit with. And that was cool. But most of the time, it was just like Sean would be like, you lock up. And then, you know, JD, get him in there. And then it was JD like, you know, and I think that's where we all learned to punch people in the face. And, but like, I remember then you came and it was like, we started doing real drills instead of just do the long drill. And, you were I felt like you were trying to weed people out. Right.
Yes.
And I was like, to me, that was almost like a personal thing to me, because I was like, okay, I'm the fat guy here, right? And nobody wants the fat guy around. And this guy wants us to run and move and work and break our asses. I was like I was paranoid about it. I was like, he's trying to get rid of me. You know what I mean? So that kind of like motivated me to work harder and to try and get it and to listen to everything that you were saying. But I remember looking around and all of a sudden guys were dropping off, right? Yeah. Like the all of a sudden the suburban SWAT team was gone. Remember them?
Yeah.
Right? And then like the big, remember the kid we called Trainwreck?
Yep.
He was gone. Yeah. And people would show up and they would be there a few weeks, but then they'd be gone. And then it was just like, all of a sudden, started looking around and there was like 6 of us. Right. And then over time, every time somebody showed up, it wasn't like the people who were showing up in the beginning. Like, it were people like Kai and Dorian. Like, okay, we're getting guys here now that want to be like, don't get
they want to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. We fucked off and made jokes and everybody laughed and had a good time and shit. But I mean, like, everybody who was there was serious about doing what we were doing, which then after a while I was like, okay, what he's trying to do is fill this place with people who actually want to do this and that can have fun doing it while taking it seriously. Right. But it took like, I'm pretty sure for like the first 6 or 8 months, I didn't think you would have knew what fun was if it punched you in the mouth. I was like, there's no way this guy knows how, like he probably doesn't even smile. But anyway, but what were
Well,
your motivations in the beginning of when you first came to train us? Intentions, rather.
well, it was that. It was exactly what it became, right? And it was, you know, Sean was telling me, he goes, I don't care if they all stick around or if they all leave. He's like, you know, he goes, I just want good wrestlers to come out of my school. That's what I want. And I said, okay, you know. So I was totally on board with that. What at that time I can say what was fun for me was working hard and uh, trying to prove a point, I guess. I don't know, not necessarily to you guys, but to myself and for every other show I had coming up. Like I took training seriously. I just didn't think it was a play. Like we had fun, right? But it was like at an appropriate time type thing, you know. Or when someone did something really stupid and then we all stopped to point and laugh. But that's what made it fun was the shows because I could see you guys all getting better. And then when guys were coming to the back and they were like, holy shit, like that was insane. That was fun, you know, like to me. So that's when I knew, okay, it's working, you know. So I'd watch only the guys, I would watch the show, right? But it was only our guys. Like it was the guys that were in training, and then I would go watch their match. And I would never like always critique everything, but I would listen to how everyone came to the back and how they were reacting to it, you know. So that was my goal. And it wasn't so much that it was like picking on a certain type of person, but I wanted that certain type of person to know that you still have to learn and be able to do all this stuff, because if another big person comes in and you're running laps around them, then they go, oh, he's a serious guy. Right. And I'm taking this shit like a joke. So I took that personally because you'd be like, yeah, Ricky Reyes trained me. And everyone may look at you and be like, oh, he's a big fat guy. Right. But he's like a Bam Bam Bigelow or a Vader big fat guy where you're constantly moving and bumping. And it's a different mindset because that is something that bigger guys rest on, and that's their out, right? Like, well, I don't have to do these drills because I'm not going to do them in a match. And it's like some of that's true, but if you still don't know how to do these things or understand them, you could still hurt somebody or allow somebody to get hurt in the ring. And that's your fault because you don't know it, because you chose not to know it. So yeah, and I just wanted you guys to know, like, the more fun we were having, the little bit harder we were working at certain things, because I wanted you guys to know that the fun part is that Saturday night when you hear that pop, that's when you cash in, right? Like Chuck Liddell said, the work, you get paid for the training, and then the fight is free because you get to just go out there and have fun, you know, because if you trained right, the matches were easy, right? So that was my mindset. And then I had stuff to prove because, you know, I was at a point where I'm like kind of sort of still talking to Ring of Honor around like 2012, I think, for a little bit. And then WWE was kind of like sweet on me for a second. So I was training with you guys, right, with everything for my own selfish reasons too, like thinking like, okay, well, if I get really good, these guys get really good, and then I'll have really good matches, and then I'll be better for whatever opportunities come up. So
let's talk about. We're gonna end on this here today, because this is gonna be fun. And if he watches this, I'm sorry. This doesn't mean I don't like you. I love you. But the one person you failed to weed out, to get proper production out of, right? Like, he was there.
Always there.
He paid attention, and he kind of tried, but it just never, ever clicked. So let's talk about Razzle Dazzle.
Razzle dazzle.
I mean, I'm gonna, as we go into this more, I'm gonna ask you what, if you can remember there, because there are certain characters, right, that I want to see. Like, I know my first memory of Razzle, right, and it was before I knew any better, and it's the day it's actually the minute I learned. Like, I walked in, it was my first day, and he's like, "Oh, I've been doing this a couple years," and I was like, "Oh, cool," and he was like, "Check this out. It's a double spin kick." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And then he bent over at the waist, like 90 degrees, and like twirled in a circle and kind of just kicked both his heels up twice. Like almost like, remember on Mad TV? Look what I can do. Look what I can do. And I was like, "Oh, okay, this isn't the guy to be trying to learn anything from." And I moved on, right? But like, do you credit him at all for trying, or?
I do. I could say he got less bad as time went on.
Right.
Because I don't think anybody besides maybe me and maybe you, probably just me and you, would be the only ones to kind of like help him on some sort of match setup, right? For his particular skill set, right? So I honestly can't think of anybody else that would give the time to say, don't do this, just do this, this, and this at these times, and then you'll be fine. Because yes, he did show up, right? For what it's worth. Sometimes we just needed to get him out of the ring because somebody was going to get injured. So I didn't want that. So a lot of times I was trying to coach him up on the floor and then give him ideas. And then I know at shows, like I know you've talked to him. I don't think anybody else really, maybe Kev, maybe a little bit, or gave him ideas or something, but nobody really helped him, right?
Right.
But you also had to understand him in order to help him. So only us would understand him, right? Because if you're an outsider wrestler coming in, like you're a luchador and you got razzle dazzle, that's almost a rib, right? Yeah. And then, and then you're telling him, hey, and then do this, and then do this. And he's like, yeah, okay, because he's not going to say no. And then he doesn't. Right. But we understood what he was and could be for the show overall, second match, whatever, and then move on. But no, I mean, the one thing that bothered me the most about him was I thought he was going to injure somebody.
Yeah.
Like seriously, like in a match or in practice. That was the only real concern I had. Otherwise than that, he was pretty irrelevant to me. Like, and then I kept his shit short, and I'm like, all right, Razzle, like, you're not going to do this type of stuff in the match, so let's make something for you. And then he's like, yeah. So you do his little stuff, and then we move on. So there's only so much you can do with them.
I used to get I think I only had one match with Razzle, and I actually got hurt, but I hurt myself because I told him to shit can me, and the guardrails were too close to the ring.
Yeah.
And I didn't compensate for it, and I smashed my shin across the top of the guardrail. Yeah. But when he would be with anybody, they'd be like, "What do you do?" And like, we finally got him to a point where somebody asked him, "What do you do?" His answer was, "I don't know." So like, people would be like, "What do you do?" And he'd be like, "Oh, I do this suplex thing from the corner." But then he always did that Northern Light suplex, and I felt like he wasn't, like, he always hit it, but it was always so close to a disaster. You know what I mean? It was like people's hair, like grazing across the mat as they went over, and it was scary. I thought he was gonna fucking plant somebody.
Yes.
One of the anytime he did something where he lifted up and was in control of another human being's life was terrifying, but also for some reason I couldn't not watch.
Right. Yeah.
And that was Razzle.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, he always showed up. So I always felt he needed to be on the show. That was only fair. And then it was like, all right, he's really not leaving. So let's try to make this as painless as possible. And I know a couple times he came to the back and he kind of like, I remember him telling me like, yeah, I only did this, this, and this. And the crowd, and I'm like, all right, cool. Like you're getting it a little, like, and that's kind of all I could ever ask for from him,
Do you remember the one show that during the breakdown of the ring, like Mikey Old School threw a ball of tape at him? So Razzle's response was to hit him in the face with a chair. Or was that the other way around? I don't think Old School was like stupid enough to go up to somebody who more than likely clearly had special needs and hit him with a folding chair.
Right. Yeah. I don't really. I mean, that particular incident doesn't ring a bell, but we had quite a few of those incidents. So.
Sure did. Sure did. All right. I think we're going to wrap up here. Just to let you know where we kind of got up to. See, I couldn't pick one event because I felt like we wouldn't be able to really just talk about one match in the early stages of this.
Yeah.
We're coming up on the title change where you beat Vinny.
Right.
Then we know from there what we're heading for. So I think next week we can break down a little bit of the New York State title feud and then get into the beginnings of Podfluxxx versus VSK and friends and probably get to the Steel Cage survival match.
Sounds like fun.
There's a lot to unpack with that Steel Cage survival.
There's all kinds of stuff.
Oh, all right, well, Motherfluxxers, this has been Podfluxxx, episode number 66. I am going to go to sleep and put this horrible day behind me and count down the hours until I get a couch. And this has been our favorite topic of Victory Pro Wrestling, and I'm excited to keep going with this.
Yeah,
we'll get back into Lucha Underground, I think, in a few more weeks. But, Rick, until then, we'll catch you Motherfluxxers on the flip side.